Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Nandita P, the national convener of GAPIO Women's Forum. I'm also an IVF specialist running 9 Bloom IVF clinics in India, Mumbai, Delhi, Gurgaon, Chandigarh, Nashik, and New Bombay. I'm also the past president of FOXY, which is a national organization of 40,000 gynecologists of India with chapters in London and New York. Professor at the D.Y. Patil Medical College and teacher for super specialty in reproductive medicine. It gives me great pleasure to moderate this session, which has been a regular feature of the annual conference. It is in line with the vision of the GAPIO Women's Forum, that is, to address the barriers and challenges to women. We have phenomenal speakers today, women who have excelled in their chosen fields, who will give us their insight. Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, a biotech giant, Ms. Shireen Bhan, she's the editor of CNN, and Ms. Mihira Sood, the Supreme Court lawyer. We have wonderful chairpersons who will introduce our speakers. I must remind you, friends, that you can send all your questions to the chat box. It must contain your name and email ID, and we will definitely reply to you by email 1 week after the conference is over. I take great pleasure in introducing Dr. Vinita Saran, who is an associate professor of radiology at the San Beda University, Manila. Dr. Vinita has done fellowship in CT MRI, ultrasound, and breast imaging from the Makati Medical Center, Philippines. Dr. Vinita was consultant of the WHO CRO India from June 2017 to November 2017. She's also the country convener of GAPIO, Philippines. She will now introduce our next speaker, Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw.
Thank you, Dr. Nandita P, for the kind introduction and invitation to introduce Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. I would also like to thank Global Association of Physicians of Indian origin for the wonderful opportunity to be the chairperson of this session. Now let me introduce Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw is a pioneer of biotechnology industry in India. She is the founder, chairperson, and managing director of the country's leading biotechnology enterprise, Biocon Limited. Her immense contributions to research, innovation, and affordable healthcare has been recognized by many national and international awards. Ms. Mazumdar-Shaw has been named as one of the 100 most influential people in the world by the Time magazine. Ms. Mazumdar-Shaw has been conferred with India's two highest civilian honors, the Padma Shri and the Padma Bhushan. Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw's commitment to affordable healthcare extends beyond business. She has established a 1,400-bed Mazumdar Shaw Cancer Center at Bangalore. The center provides affordable, world-class cancer care services to patients, irrespective of their socio-economic status. Now I would like to request Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw to deliver her keynote address. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, and I'm delighted to deliver this keynote address at the annual conference of the Women's Forum of the Global Physicians of Indian Origin, or GAPIO. I will be speaking on the subject of barriers and solutions to women in the field of entrepreneurship. Let me start by saying that women have contributed significantly to India's economic development in various fields. As a woman entrepreneur myself, I do believe that women entrepreneurs have also contributed to the Indian economy through individual and collective self-help groups, which have also been extremely entrepreneurial. However, I do believe that women face many credibility challenges, just as I have had my fair of credibility challenges. But I do also believe that we as a society have to overcome the very serious gender biases that exist in allowing women to realize their full potential. Of course, the world has many outstanding examples of women in leadership roles, and I think in politics we have many of them, like Jacinda Ardern of the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Germany's Angela Merkel, other political leaders from Finland, Norway, Scotland, and Taiwan, who of course have demonstrated huge leadership in the way they managed the pandemic. But let's not forget our own country, India, where we've also seen some stellar women leaders. We have seen our banking sector being headed by some of the most, outstanding women leaders or business leaders, I would say, in our country. But I also know that women entrepreneurs do face serious challenges. We are now seeing a lot of young women from large business families also being appointed as business leaders, which is a very welcome development. I'm glad to see Roshini Nadar taking over from her illustrious father. But let's look at some of the metrics or indicators. The MasterCard Index for women entrepreneurs has ranked India 52 in 2019 for the third consecutive year, way behind US and China, which are at the first and sixth spot respectively. India's score actually also had another dimension where World Bank estimates that 75% of working age women, that is 35% of India's working age population, currently do not have paid work. Only 59% of women have access to mobile phones, with an abysmally low internet penetration of 19%. And only 35% of women actively use their bank accounts, indicating the plight of women in our country. Women also represent 42% of our agricultural labor force, but only 2% of them own farmland. An estimated 75% or 324 million women are not in the labor force, and another 19 million are in the labor force but not employed. Ironically, women who are actively participating in the workforce are apparently 3 times more likely than men to be unemployed when the situation arises. And additionally, as per the 2019 study by the Center for Monitoring the Indian Economy, or CMIE, states that women graduates are more than 3.5 times likely than their male peers to be unemployed. Overall, unemployment in India is estimated at 7%, but unemployment among women is 18%. At 17% of GDP, the economic contribution of Indian women is less than half the global average and compares very unfavorably to the 40% in China, for instance. The MasterCard Index of Women Entrepreneurs clearly shows that women are able to perform better in vibrant markets like Singapore, Australia, and other parts of the world, where labor participation rates are comparatively higher. So what is it that is discouraging women entrepreneurs in India from realizing their true potential? I think it starts with equal rights to property assets, which are often ignored when it comes to women. I think, women defer to fathers, brothers, husbands, or sons in asset ownership in terms of their access to such rights. I do believe that women are far more resigned to be primary caregivers rather than opt for professional work outside. I think all this has led to self-doubt, lack of self-confidence, etc., which shows up in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Because we have clearly seen that women have reduced mobility because of their perceived role in society, and thereby provides or introduces this hurdle for women's employment, or for that matter, in entrepreneurship. I do believe that one of the biggest challenges women entrepreneurs have in the country is access to the right kind of skills that are required to run businesses, access to capital, which is very, very limited when it comes to women entrepreneurs. And I think these are some of the areas we do need to improve in. Women, I believe, are also less integrated with both the formal and informal networks in our country, and which directly leads to a unequitable access to business opportunities, mentors, and informal knowledge. As I mentioned, I think access to funds is a huge constraint when it comes to women entrepreneurs. Low personal savings and assets, limited financial support from friends and family, and a lack of funding from banks and private investors actually introduces a very big barrier to women entrepreneurs. I myself know that when I started my business, I just couldn't provide any collateral asset or a collateral security. I was considered high risk when it came to, even accessing any kind of debt or loan. And I know that most men have disproportionately unfair advantage when it comes to access to finance. So I think it begins with a huge social challenge for most women as one of the biggest hurdles to enter into the realms of entrepreneurship. Now, how do we balance business with often unpaid roles as caregivers, household managers, and home-based workers with professional opportunities? There is a lack of institutional support system for first-timers, so even at the smallest obstacle or failure, women give up. And they revert back to their caregiver roles, which, as you know, is an unpaid, unfulfilling kind of engagement, which really doesn't lead to any kind of economic independence. India has been doing a lot in recent times to encourage women entrepreneurs, and I must acknowledge organizations such as Niti Aayog, who have started a women entrepreneurship platform, the Catalyst for Women Entrepreneurship, and Empower as India's first tech accelerator for women in entrepreneurship, which is really dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs. And they do connect them with relevant people in their industry, foster networking, invest in them for skill development, etc., etc. They do also assist in fundraising by, educating them about how to pitch and connect them with potential investors. But nevertheless, the amounts that they're accessing is still very, very small. So whilst these are positive signs and these are, opportunities for women entrepreneurs in India, I still believe that more needs to be done. Women-owned entrepreneurs are growing, to be fair. Over the past decade, women-owned entrepreneurs have increased from 14 to 20% as per government sources. And this is definitely with the help of national and state governments and certain policies that have mandated investors and banks and financial and educational institutes to support women. And in recent years, there's been a clear recognition of women on the national economic agenda, including efforts to promote entrepreneurship. Both public and private entities have launched a wide range of initiatives to provide impetus to augment gender diversity in various areas. So let me talk about some of the emerging women entrepreneurs in life sciences who have really, bucked this trend, face many challenges, and are still steaming ahead. So let me mention Manjari Bakre, who is the CEO and founder of OncoStem, whom I know extremely well. This is an oncology diagnostics company developing personalized tests that can assess an individual's risk of cancer recurrence and the personalized treatment options that such patients can address. Dr. Geeta Manjunath, the founder of and CEO of Niramai, which stands for Non-Invasive Risk Assessment with machine learning, and is working on a non-invasive, radiation-free, painless, low-cost breast cancer screening solution. But using this technology, Geeta has also been able to use this technology for river blindness or for detecting river blindness in African populations, which is an application that the Gates Foundation is backing. Then, of course, there is a very seasoned entrepreneur, Anu Acharya, who is the co-founder and CEO of Map My Genome, a molecular diagnostics company offering personalized health solutions based on genomics and genetic tests, very much like the US 23andMe. So let me start with my own story. 4 decades ago, I started Biocon on a modest 10,000 rupee savings in my bank. And of course, with a huge dream to create India's first biotech company. I was 25 years old, I had no business experience, and like I said, I had very little money in the bank. So I can tell you that I was a huge risk to invest in when it came to banks who were reluctant to provide me any financial support. People did not want to work for a women employer. And my biotech business model was a huge risk because most people didn't understand what I was doing. But I can tell you that I didn't give up. I persisted, I reached out to anyone and everyone who was willing to help me, and I did find many people who believed in my business. And today, of course, 4 decades later, thanks to those initial group of people who believed in me, I've built India's largest biopharmaceutical enterprise. And I'm committed to making it into a global biotechnology leader. And of course, I'm committed to addressing both affordability and accessibility in delivering life-saving medicines for cancer and diabetes. And of course, autoimmune diseases is another area which we are very focused on. So the Biocon story of entrepreneurship is one of how I battled challenges, how I found solutions. And I really want people to look at my story and gain confidence in terms of what women entrepreneurs ought to be doing in terms of not giving up and taking on challenges and getting that confidence from overcoming those challenges. I've always said that women entrepreneurs have a huge opportunity in a country like India. I think there's no dearth of great ideas for women entrepreneurs to pursue. I've quoted some of them in the life sciences area. But there are women doing wonderful things in many other tech areas. I know women who are involved in the newly opened up space technology area, where there are many, many bright, savvy women who can actually lead some of these tech enterprises. And my advice to budding women entrepreneurs is don't give up easily. Find and build a good team. That will really make you succeed. I think that's extremely important because that's what I did. You can't do it alone. You have to find a group of people who buy into your idea, who are willing to build this company, build this idea. And I think beneath this whole effort has to be a clear sense of purpose. It is that sense of purpose that led me to be successful. And I want every woman to go about building her business enterprise with that sense of purpose. Why are you doing it? What does it mean to do? Why do you want to succeed in the idea you're pursuing? And of course, to do all of this, you have to believe in yourself. As an entrepreneur, self confidence, self belief, and avoiding self doubt is of huge importance. So let me conclude by saying that entrepreneurship is a bold and daring path, irrespective of whether you're a man or a woman. It is about being able to take an idea, shape an idea, and take that idea to the market. And in that path of doing so is fraught with risks, is fraught with challenges, and it has to be addressed with a sense of conviction and purpose. COVID has thrown up enormous opportunities to conceptualize and build new ideas and new businesses. And this is an entrepreneur's time to really build such new businesses. From contactless services to wearables that monitor your health and safety, to building new tests and diagnostic tests and therapies and vaccines, there is something in it for everyone. The virtual world has also thrown us into a digital world with a plethora of new digital ideas, and I urge every one of you to think about it. So let me end by saying I think women must not shy away from entrepreneurship. Women must not shy away from coming up or backing new ideas. And women must think big, because one of your biggest, what shall I say, downsides for women is that they think small. And even if it's a big idea, they make it sound small. And that is something which women must overcome. Every small idea can become a big opportunity. And that's what I want every woman to understand. And I think these are the barriers. The barriers in our minds is something we have to set ourselves free from. There are many, many solutions out there. So I do hope that we see more and more women enter the field of entrepreneurship. I think the fact that I'm addressing the medical fraternity, I just want to say there are so many opportunities for translational research, for new ideas to address unmet medical needs. So I wish everyone a very happy 2021, and let's hope that this is the year of women entrepreneurs, and let's hope that the future will see many, many successful women entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vinita Saran, for introducing the speaker so well. And I would really like to thank Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw for this enlightening speech. Your speech really brought new insights and it has motivated us to venture into this big world in a big way, as you said. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Dr. Anupama Gotimukula. She will introduce Ms. Mihira Sood. Dr. Anupama is a pediatric anesthesiologist at Children's Hospital of San Antonio, Texas, USA. Dr. Anupama is an empowered woman who is currently the president-elect of the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin.
Thank you, Dr. Nandita P, for your kind introduction. I want to thank Global Association of Physicians of Indian Origin for giving me this wonderful opportunity to introduce our speaker, Ms. Mihira Sood, on challenges faced by women. Ms. Mihira Sood is a leading lawyer in Supreme Court of India and an academic specializing in the field of gender justice. She obtained her law degree from the National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, Hyderabad, and an LLM from Columbia University, United States. Ms. Sood has consulted with the Justice Verma Committee in its report on reform of laws related to gender based violence. She has also worked with UN Women and the government of Tanzania on various reforms and development efforts. She has taught at National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, National Law University, and at Jindal Global Law School. She frequently writes and speaks in the media on issues of social justice. Ms. Sood also serves on internal complaints committees of various organizations, hearing disputes, conducting awareness and sensitization programs, and ensuring legal compliance with the Sexual Harassment Prevention Act. May I request Ms. Mihira Sood to give her talk now? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I must tell you, though, that at the start, when I first got the invite to speak here, the temptation to throw medical analogies at you was extremely strong to, talk about sexual harassment as a disease and the symptoms and the root cause and the correct diagnosis. I think the prospect of addressing a bunch of physicians on this was just too tempting. However, I promise you that the only medical analogy that I've made is in the title, which I imagine, comparing it to a global pandemic might have struck some of you, at least some of you, as being deliberately provocative or a forced analogy with a very serious global crisis. The provocation was certainly deliberate, but the reason was to emphasize just how pervasive and serious the culture of sexual harassment is, how poorly it is understood, and how devastating and long lasting the impact, and also how inadequate are the legal remedies that exist to deal with this problem. And to that extent, it is indeed a pandemic and one that is extremely poorly understood and not taken seriously enough. Up to 85% of women in the United States, for example, say that they've been sexually harassed at work at some point in their lives. Around 60% of women in Europe say that, with numbers varying across countries. And in India, the numbers have been growing by leaps and bounds ever since the law was enacted, which shockingly was as late as 2013. And if these are the figures, despite the problems in reporting offenses like this, the stigma, the fear of retaliation, the fear of victim blaming and reputational loss that I'm sure all of you are to some extent familiar with, that this offense is so underreported, one can only imagine the actual numbers pertaining to this offense. And add to that the fact that the term sexual harassment covers a range of behavior that many people, even the victims themselves, may not necessarily see as strictly falling, in that sphere or in a legally actionable kind of offense, even though they know that it is something that makes them uncomfortable. So plenty of women, even in surveys like this, may not necessarily respond saying that, yes, they feel they've been harassed, when in fact they actually have. The fact is that as people spend longer and longer hours at work, and as workplaces, try to become more and more informal and friendly, employers try to, foster workforce camaraderie through initiatives like retreats and post-work drinks, office Christmas parties, etc. The potential for unwanted advances and misunderstandings also does arise. And that isn't to say that such efforts should not be made, but simply to emphasize the increasing importance of awareness and sensitization regarding what is and isn't acceptable conduct, and what is and isn't sexual harassment. For example, a common defense to an allegation of sexual harassment is that there was no physical advance. And now the term sexual harassment covers not just unwanted physical advances, but also, verbal or other non-physical, non-physical and non-verbal sexually charged conduct that might make a person feel uncomfortable, such as forwarding lewd jokes or pictures, talking about topics that aren't suitable for work, inquiring about one's personal life in a manner that makes a person uncomfortable, or making suggestions thereto, etc. It's also important to understand that sexual harassment need not necessarily involve some kind of quid pro quo, that you will get some benefit, professional or economic benefit, if you submit to my advances, or that you will suffer some kind of professional or economic retaliation if you reject my advances. A quid pro quo is only one form of sexual harassment. There is also the concept of a hostile work environment, which can include, even comments, kind of stereotyping, body shaming, homophobic conduct, and both verbal and non-verbal, etc. Another thing that's important to understand, very often people respond to an allegation of sexual harassment by saying, but that's not what I meant. That's not what I intended. And it's important to understand that as far as the law is concerned, it's not the perpetrator or the accused person's intent that matters. It is how the person, the victim, the accuser perceived it, and whether or not she felt harassed. And there's also, of course, the question of consent. And that's a tricky one because, as I said, as people do spend longer and longer hours in the workplace, there are bound to be workplace relationships, and very often may even be among a person who is in a superior position, person who may be able to directly influence one's employment metrics and things like that. And in that situation, the question really is, could she reasonably have felt unable to say no? And if that's not the case, then that relationship is really quite inappropriate, even if in the facts of that situation, the person did feel that she consented. And the appropriate thing to do, a lot of workplaces now have relationship reporting to HR and things like that. But really the appropriate thing to do, and that I also advise my clients, is that one person should really try to find alternative employment if the relationship is that serious, because the potential for biased treatment towards that person, resentment on the part of other employees, the potential for even the perception of that biased treatment or retaliation in case the relationship goes sour is just too strong. And here's where I want to talk a little bit also about how inadequate existing protections and remedies are, both legally, at least in India, and culturally, which is much more of a global phenomenon. In India, there is no external sexual harassment complaints committee like the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission in the United States, which some of you might be familiar with. The option to complain to the Internal Complaints Committee is quite fraught with risk, given that there is only one external member and the rest are all senior employees within that organization. And in most cases, the harasser is also a senior person and would be closer to them. The potential for bias is therefore extremely high. And the pressure on the members of the complaints committee to exonerate the perpetrator and avoid the negative publicity is really far too high. The problem, however, isn't just legal. I did speak earlier a little bit about the number of women who stay silent about their harassment out of very real fears of, whether it's not being believed, being branded as a spoil sport, or as somebody who can't have fun, or isn't a team player, being branded as somebody who was sleeping with the boss to get ahead, crying foul when the relationship turned sour or when people found out about it. Um, being questioned on her own actions, why she reported it so late, what she wore, how she seemed perfectly comfortable and didn't seem to anybody else as being, uncomfortable with these advances, or, how the boss is like this with everybody. Why is she making a fuss about it? Or how someone else in her place would never have tolerated something like this. Um, Possibly also the fear of losing out on a promotion, getting a poor recommendation or a bad review. And in this way, plenty of women are unable to actually rise in their professions, being, branded as loose and unprofessional if you tolerate the harassment, being branded as a troublemaker if you don't. And to many people who have not experienced sexual harassment at the workplace, it may seem like a form of flattery, but honestly, as someone who has, I can tell you that it's extremely humiliating and disempowering. It's also incredibly confusing to process and identify the problem, to understand, is this harassment, or is this just unwelcome flirtation? Does unwelcome flirtation really fall within the boundaries of harassment? Am I making a big deal about nothing? And then to try and figure out, how do you deal with it? Do you just grit your teeth till you find another job? What if the other job isn't good enough? What if you have a lot of financial commitments? Do you simply try to avoid situations where you're alone together? Do you draw a line that, as long as it doesn't turn physical, you're not going to say anything about it? Or if it does get physical, you won't say anything about it until it leads to rape? And is that really a line we should be drawing for ourselves? Do you tell your parents about it, against whom you may have fought very hard to be allowed to work, to be allowed to join this particular workplace? Do you risk losing the freedom that you've really fought so hard for, particularly in a country like India, where that freedom is really hard fought and won? And then what about, the gossip and the stereotyping as you yourself are trying to make the best of a bad situation? Or the impact on your self-esteem when you realize that, for some people, even people you look up to, you've dreamed of working with, you're really nothing but a sexual object. And what the impact that can also have on your career. And that's why sexual harassment is, in fact, one of the biggest reasons that women don't rise to the top in many of their professions, that women leave their jobs, that they switch careers midway and maybe start something else totally halfway through their working lives, or end up leaving the workforce altogether. And it would really maybe shock you, but think about it. The impact of this sort of loss is really staggering, whether it's the loss of talent and diversity in the organizations and industries that are affected by this, which is pretty much every industry. The stunting of careers, potentially of half the population of the world, and the loss of financial independence to a number of women. And with that, the resulting reinforcement of women having less power in society and thereby being vulnerable to further and further abuse of varying kinds, and being unable to leave it because of that lack of power and financial independence. And that's when I come back to why I chose this title. This is a global pandemic that really needs to be taken far more seriously than it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama. Mrs. Mihira Sood, loved your original approach, and your in-depth knowledge of your cases has really brought the subject to the forefront for all of us. I would like to invite Dr. Seema Arora to introduce the next speaker, Ms. Shirin Bhan. Dr. Seema Arora is a board-certified internal medicine physician and practicing in specialized medical aesthetics in USA. Dr. Seema was Chair, Board of Trustees of the American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin for 2019-20, past President of the Indian Medical Association of New England, USA, and the past President of Lady Harding Medical College Alumni Association of North America. Dr. Seema is also a co convenor of the Gapio Women's Forum with me.
Thank you, Dr. Nandita, for this kind introduction. I would also like to thank Gapio for giving me this opportunity to chair this talk during the session Challenges Faced by Women. Now, I would like to take the honor of introducing our next speaker, Ms. Shireen Bhan. Ms. Shireen Bhan is the managing editor of CNBC TV 18 with over 20 years of experience in the field of television broadcast, tracking corporate policy news and events that defined the business landscape in India. For more than a decade now, Ms. Shireen has not only been producing and anchoring flagship shows like India Business Hour and Young Turks, she has also been hands-on in guiding and molding young business journalists. Ms. Shireen is also the anchor and editor of Young Turks, one of India's longest running shows on entrepreneurship, a section that over the last 18 years has successfully built a niche category in business news programming. Ms. Shireen has been the recipient of the Best Business Talk Show Award at the News Television Awards for 2 years consecutively. She also won the FICCI Woman of the Year Award for the contribution to the media in 2005 and was named a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum. She also won the Best Business Award Anchor at the News Television Awards in 2013 and the Best English News Anchor Award in 2018. Ms. Shireen was named in Impact's 50 Most Influential Women in India marketing and advertising list for 2018, 19, and yet again for 2020. Ms. Shireen has also won the News Television Editor-in-Chief of the Year in the English category and the Best Anchor English in the prestigious NBA 2019 awards. Now, I would like to request Ms. Shireen to deliver her speech.
Well, thank you very much to Dr. Palshetkar as well as Gapio for inviting me here today. When my colleague Ekta Batra told me that this is something that had come to her and she wanted to know if I was open to the idea of doing this. And I said, I'm going to be talking to a webinar of doctors, of physicians. And I just felt like, why would they want to listen to me? Why would they want to hear anything from me at all? Because this is something that we go through as women all the time, more so than men. I think that men do also suffer from the pangs of it, but I think women more so. It's the imposter syndrome, though after having done at least a gazillion shows on COVID this year, I feel like I almost begin to sound like a physician. But that apart, I think I decided that this was an opportunity for me to be able to share my story, to share the lessons that I've learned over the last 20 years of working at CNBC, of running a channel like CNBC, of leading a team of men and women. And, if there is something interesting that you can take away from this story, then I'll be happy for it. But let me at the outset start by saying that I understand that I'm speaking to you from a place of privilege. I come from a family that didn't make me or my sister feel small because of the fact that we were women. I come from a family where no one put limits on our abilities. No one put limits on what we were allowed to do. We had agency when we were growing up. And I understand that that is not the case for a large majority of women, unfortunately, in India and in other parts of the world as well. So I accept and acknowledge that privilege. But I'm here to share that, even if you're not as privileged as some of us are, and you don't have the unconditional support and backing of family and friends, and have mentors and guides and counsels to help you, there are some things that you can keep in mind that can be helpful in your journey. And I've sort of put it together and I call it open. Why open? It starts with opportunities. And I think my life is an example where I have embraced every opportunity that's come my way. When I was in my class 10th, I was giving my board examinations, and I was very clear that I was actually going to take up medicine as a profession because I come from a family where there's lots and lots of doctors. So it seemed like the natural thing to do. But I decided to utilize my board examination holidays, after I'd given my exams, to actually work with my aunt, who happens to be a gynecologist in Delhi, and to see whether I was really cut out for it or not. And while I was doing that, I discovered that I absolutely had no stomach for blood or the ability to deal with that kind of intense, emotion that you have to deal with when you're dealing with patients, you're in a hospital, dealing with a crisis. And I just felt that that was not what I was going to be capable of doing effectively. And that veered me to explore other facets of my personality. That took me towards the other skill set that I have, and which was I always had a creative bent of mind. I was good at debating, I was good at writing, and I thought, okay, let me explore the art of storytelling. And I didn't know then that I was going to end up in journalism, but I thought that I would maybe do documentary filmmaking, I would get into writing, I would work in advertising. And I was open to these opportunities that came my way, and journalism happened by accident, but it was an opportunity that I decided to embrace. And that is what I would like to share with you, that and this is, I studied philosophy in college, and it's the wonderful words of the philosopher Seneca. And he says that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And this is what I have come to realize in all aspects of my life, that, A, be open to the opportunities that come your way, but B, be prepared. Don't take things for granted. Don't take your skills for granted. Don't take your knowledge for granted. You have to show a better version of yourself every single day. I have not been in the pursuit of excellence. I have been in the pursuit of improvement. And that is how I guide myself through all aspects of my life, work and outside. I think what is then crucial is to come to identifying your purpose, then identifying how you put a process in place to achieve that purpose, and then to really have the passion to be able to marry the purpose and the process. And this is something that I believe that each one of us has to be able to do. And when I talk about purpose, it is about identifying why you want to do something. I mean, I wanted to tell stories, and that became the foundation of my career in journalism. And you have to ask yourself this question, and you have to be able to answer that question, and that will lead you then to the process, which is, how do I get this going? How can I actually make my purpose a reality? How can I give it manifestation in the physical world? And that will then result in the outcome that you're hopefully working towards. There's a wonderful author. If you haven't read him, he's a great speaker as well, Simon Sinek. And he puts this down as his 3 rules. The why means purpose, how means the process, and what means the result. And when this comes together, it does create magic. And as he says, that working hard for something we don't care about is called stress, but working hard for something we love is called passion. And I think each one of us has to be able to find that something that we're truly passionate about, and then persevere. I cannot stress or highlight the importance of perseverance, and that is something that has worked very well for me in life as well. I think as leaders, and this is something that I have come to learn over time, through my conversations with many leaders running large global corporations, running large businesses, is to have empathy. And that distinguishes a good leader from a poor leader, I would say. This is a conversation that I was having with Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and he said that the key to empathy, the key to everything is empathy, because nothing is more fruitful than walking in the shoes of the others. And if you were to do that, I think it makes you a much more effective leader, because it helps you anticipate the challenges that your workforce may be able to, may have to deal with. And it also helps you then prepare and provide solutions for how you're going to be able to deal with that. And, for instance, as at CNBC, as a woman leader, I was very clear about the fact that, there is not, I want to make this a place, I want to have a culture that encourages women to stay on post the difficult periods when there's maternity, and the transitions happen, and there's people get married, and those are tough times where you usually in the corporate world see women opting out of the workforce. And I said, what can we do as a culture, as an organization, to actually ensure that women feel like they're wanted, that women feel incentivized to stay on? So we've created an atmosphere of camaraderie, of trust, of teamwork. And we don't make the other person feel like if you need those extra days off because you have a child to tend with, or your old parents to tend with, or whatever, if the organization steps in and supports everyone. So we've tried to make sure that we're there for the women, but we're also equally there for the men, and it makes it a culture of giving. It makes it a culture of being able to support each other, and really the fundamental principle of building trust in the transactions that we carry forward and carry through. And I think that's very, very crucial. I think one of the things that we don't do enough as women is ask for help. And that's part of the societal conditioning of, you should be able to juggle all the balls at all times, this need and quest to be perfect at all times. And it's not possible. There's this debate that we've been having for several years now on whether women can have it all. I don't believe that we can have it all the time. We can have some things at some point, and we have to be able to learn to prioritize, and we have to learn to ask for help without feeling apologetic about it. Lean on friends and family and mentors, and say and have an honest and open conversation about how we really feel. And I think we hold ourselves back very often because we fear judgment. And look, we are going to be judged irrespective of whether we do something, say something, don't do something, or don't say something. So the best, I think, is to have an honest and open conversation first with ourselves, and then with the people around us. And because if people who care about us will make the effort to understand what we're going through, and sometimes people just don't realize. And I think so it's important to put it out there and say, this is how I feel, and this is what I would like for you, from you. And I think that really goes a long way in being able to realize our true potential. Again, there's so much societal baggage that we carry as women, where we feel that we're being watched, we feel we're being judged, we feel we're being evaluated, and that's just part of what we're going to have to deal with. So how do you learn to accept that? How do you learn to not let that matter as much? I think the process of seeking validation externally is something that we have to let go of. And it's not easy. We have to learn to let go of it. And it happens as you build your own confidence. It happens as you build your own self-esteem, as you are clearer about what you want for yourself from your life, and you learn to negotiate your life on your own terms. And the minute you let go of this process of seeking external validation, who's saying what about you? What are they saying about you? Are they saying good things or bad things about you? That once that pressure is off, you will be able to realize that you can do so much building a better version of yourself. So I think that is something that I have over the years painstakingly learned, and I do hope that is something that that if you're watching this, you will take away from there. I think one of the other things that we don't do enough as women, particularly, is nurture and nourish ourselves, and that's the N in my open matrix. I think it's important to be able to have a good relationship with ourselves. It's important to keep learning. It's important to keep evolving as individuals. It's important for us not to give up on the things that we enjoyed doing. I mean, I see a lot of women, and I'm guilty of it myself, that when it's work, or if you have families and you have other commitments, you just put your your passion, your interests on the sideline and on the back burner, and that just makes you a disappointed human being. That just eventually makes you feel smaller about yourself, feel bitter about yourself. It forces you to have regrets about your life, and a life of regret is not a life that inspires people, because it pulls you down, it weighs you down. And I think it's important for us as women to nurture and nourish ourselves, because you cannot be a resource to others unless you nourish yourself. And that's something that I've read and I firmly believe in now over the years. So in 2019, after working 18-hour days, 20-hour days for the last 2 decades, I finally decided that no, I wanted to invest in myself. And so I decided to take up 2 yoga classes, and I made the same kind of commitment that I make to work to those classes. I made sure that if it was an hour every weekend, I was going to do that, and I put my heart and soul into it. And it just made me feel a better person. It made me explore a new facet of myself. It pushed me, it challenged me, it inspired me. And I think those are things that we need to work on as well. It's important to look after and be nurturers and caregivers and good leaders, but I think it's also important, it is a duty and an obligation and a responsibility to yourself to feel challenged, to feel inspired, to feel better. And I think that way you can give back much more. So this, I feel, is also something that we don't do enough of as women. And I think we must do much more of that. And I think finally, it's important to create a network around you, not just a network of women, but a network of men and women who feel equally committed to your growth as a person, who feel committed to your evolution as an individual, who stand by you unconditionally, who have your back, who inspire you. I think, we spend too much of our lives worrying about the small stuff, and too little on thinking about how we can actually improve ourselves, learn. I think life really has to be a constant process of learning. And so surround yourselves with people who don't necessarily, if I'm talking to physicians right now, you don't have to create a network of physicians who you bond with. You should in fact try and create a diverse set of people who are part of your network, so that you can feed off of them. And I've tried to do that in my life. I have very diverse set of friends. Some are lawyers, some are doctors, some are teachers, and I learn so much from them, which is very different from what I do in my daily life. And they have nothing to do with what I do at work, which is a large part of what my life is like. And they come from very diverse backgrounds. But I learn something new, something different from each and every one of them. And it makes me much more versatile. It makes me much more diverse. And it makes me much more open. And I think that is something that we have to be mindful of, is that you surround yourselves with people who can generate that kind of positive energy that fuels your own growth, that fuels your own passion, and that is something that I've learned to do over the years as well, and it's helped me cope with my own fear of judgment, my own fear of failure, and it's helped me be a much more resilient person. I think, if there's one thing that COVID-19 has taught us, and it always takes a crisis for people to look in the mirror and acknowledge some of the uncomfortable realities and uncomfortable truths, it is that we actually don't need that much drama in lives to keep ourselves going and to keep ourselves happy and to keep ourselves motivated. And I think that if we focus on what is truly important, and we focus on giving each other the purity of attention, I think that goes a long way. And as a journalist, this is something that I have learned to do, and this is something I deeply value, even though I don't see it enough around me today, is the ability to listen, is the ability to take on board somebody else's point of view, to have your own point of view, but also have the ability to listen to somebody else's point of view. It's the ability to not go into a meeting with a pre-decided agenda, having already made up your mind. It is having the courage to re-examine, to evaluate your own thought process, your own decisions, your own conclusions. And I think that, to me, is something that we don't do enough of as well. And that is something that I believe that as leaders, as individuals, as human beings, we need to do much more of, is have the ability to listen and have the ability to take on board different points of view, especially in the business that I'm in. It's the curse of the single story, and you can see it play out across television screens every evening. If you flip across different channels, you're probably going to end up watching exactly the same story playing out everywhere. And there is so much more that we need to explore. There is so many more aspects of what is happening in society, what's happening to us as a country, what's happening to us as an economy, that we fail to acknowledge, we fail to recognize, we fail to discuss, we fail to talk about. And that is something that I, as a journalist, have been mindful of, and I don't want to give into the perils of focusing on only a single story. And I think as human beings, that is something that's important, that we try and have an open mind, and look at life as a canvas, as a broader canvas, and we paint different brushstrokes on it every day in the hope that it emerges into something beautiful and vibrant, because that's what life is about. It has to have energy, it has to have passion. So at the end of the day, as I pointed out, I think it's important to be open to opportunities that come your way. It's important to have agility and flexibility and versatility, to be able to navigate the curveballs that you may encounter, and life has many of those, as we know. It's important to find a purpose, and it's important then to put a process in place, have the passion and the perseverance to ensure that that is in fact actualized into reality. It's important to have empathy, not just for yourself, but more importantly for people around you, to understand what they're going through, to be able to anticipate the challenges that may come their way. It's important to nurture and nourish yourself to emerge a stronger, more resilient, a better version of who you were the day before. Because as I pointed out, in my opinion, life is not the pursuit of excellence, but life is the pursuit of improvement.
Thank you, Seema. Ms. Bhan, we must put your ideas into practice. You have rekindled our enthusiasm to actually demand what we want. Thank you. This session was wonderful. Challenges faced by women. I think it was something very close to our hearts. Dr. Bhupinder, Dr. Anu, Dr. Seema, and myself were actually, sitting and deciding the topics, and we came up with this. And I think our speakers, Kiran Shaw Mujumdar. Uh, Let me begin with the first speaker. She described entrepreneurship as bold and daring path. I think that's fabulous. And she talked about how COVID has thrown up opportunities, the virtual world, the digital world. And I really loved that statement of hers. Barriers are in my mind, are in our minds. We must set ourselves free of them. I think that's really beautiful. And with all the examples that she gave, that there are women who have achieved it. And we must, as women practitioners, look at the unmet needs in medicine and become women entrepreneurs in medicine. I think what she said, think big. Don't think of small ideas, just think big. The wonderful solutions that she gave, access to the right kind of skills to run your business. I think there are lots of courses available now. There's a lot of things more accessible to women. Access to capital. It's very difficult for a woman, especially because she doesn't have any, collaterals. But yes, I think I loved her line. Just ask anybody and everybody that you see, and somebody will help you out. Today we have Niti Aayog. I think that was a very good tip that she gave. Niti Aayog funds women entrepreneurs. And I would really like to, say that one point that she gave all of us to take home is think big. That was an amazing take home message from her talk. The global pandemic, sexual harassment. Mihira Sood, I loved her style and the substance of her talk. It was very informative. In fact, I think she beautifully highlighted that sexual harassment may be the stumbling block or a barrier to women's progress. In fact, a lot of women change their professions or change their jobs because of sexual harassment. And the law in India has come as late as 2013. But the solutions that she offered were something to remember. Awareness and understanding should be spread not only to the women but also to the men. She made each and every woman aware that sexual harassment does not mean only physical. It means harassment in a verbal, non-verbal, even creation of an hostile work environment where the woman is made to feel inferior. And remember one thing which he said: do not be silent, because silence will make you feel humiliated, will make you lose self esteem, and it will really, really disempower the woman. So I think we should speak up. And one point to remember from a talk is the law is always on the side of the accuser. Remember, it does not pay attention to what the accused feels that he or she meant. So remember this point and do not be silent. Finally, Shirin Bhan has very lucidly put forward what women need to follow. I loved her anagram: open. Opportunity, O for opportunity. Embrace every opportunity. P, she had a lot of P's. P, preparation, be prepared. Don't take your skills for granted. Purpose is important. Passion is very important. Persevere with your cause. I think E was the most important thing which he mentioned: empathy. In any place of work, if you want to become a leader, if you want to do well, if you want to form a team, empathy is really important. And N, nurture and nourish yourself. We women are caregivers, not caretakers of ourselves. And I think that was very, very important, that you need to nourish and nurture yourself. You need to, ask for help, not just say that I will do everything myself. And you need not be perfect all the time. So I think all these factors will actually help. And I think I'm really happy today that all our three speakers have covered a variety of problems which women have, and they have given us the barriers as well as the solutions that can be offered to women who face these challenges. Once again, I would like to thank all our esteemed speakers, Ms. Kiran Muzumdar Shaw, Mihira Sood, and Shirin Bhan. Our chairpersons, Dr. Anupama, Dr. Vinita, and Dr. Seema. Special thanks goes to Anupam, Dr. Anupam Sibal, Ekta Farke, and Ms. Seema Bajaj, of course, for helping me with all the speakers. And Dr. A.K. Tandon for his immense patience. Sorry for the heartburn, Dr. Tandon. Please excuse me. And my audience, you have been amazing. Lots of questions we have received, and our replies will be sent to you 1 week after this conference end. So thank you for tuning in to our session of the Gapio Women's Forum. And it's time to now say goodbye to you, and thank you, everybody.